everyone, my name is Abiola Bello and welcome to Wigtown YA. Tonight I'll be talking to Sue Cheung, who wrote this brilliant, very hilarious book called Chinglish, which actually won the Diverse Book Awards last year for Best YA, and it was actually our first ever awards, and Sue's book came blazing in and literally stole all of our hearts, and she's actually fabulous. So tonight we're going to be talking about winning the Diverse Book Awards, her writing process, and of course about her book. If you have any questions, please put it in the chat and I will make sure I ask them towards the end of the panel. Okay, Sue, are you there?
Hi, Abiola. Hello,
Hi.
viewers. Thanks for joining us tonight. It's very exciting.
This is awesome. Well, okay, so your book, Chinglish, as I literally always say every time I get a chance to talk to you, is so funny. It's so brilliantly written, and it's that story where I'm just like, I can't believe that some of these things actually happen to you because they're so outrageous. I can't even deal with it. And it was such a pleasure rereading the book again, getting ready for this panel. But so obviously you won the Diverse Book Awards last year. You were our first ever YA winner. Did you think that you would win the awards?
Oh, absolutely no chance at all. Because I actually looked at the other books that were in that category, and there was a lot of other authors that were kind of really well established. There was probably other award winners there, and there were authors that it wasn't their debut. And I looked at all the blurb and everything for all those books, and I was like, there's absolutely no chance in hell am I going to win this. But it's fine because I've made it to this point, which is brilliant. Wow, and I was happy with that on its own. And then when the winners were going to be announced, I still was thinking, I didn't have a speech or anything like ready. I was just like, this is going to be, I'll just watch it and see what happens. Honestly, up to that point, I had absolutely no idea. It was absolute shock, honestly. Total shock.
God, it's so funny because, so basically, Sue's book was one of the last books that came in for the awards last year, and I'd already had my top three. I had my winner. Helen had a top three, no winner. We were already like butting heads about that because, our top threes are very different. And I remember I had Chinglish was like the last one to read. So I thought, okay, let's read this one, but I've got my winner. I'll just read it. And I read it and I was like, oh my God, this book is so good. I remember calling Helen being like, did you read Chinglish? Because this book is so funny. And she was like, I'm just reading it and wow. And I was like, this has to win because this is the funniest thing I've ever read in my life. Like, it is hilarious. If you haven't read Chinglish and you're here, you need to go buy Chinglish. I'm just going to just say that. But
oh my God.
Really
thank you. Thank you, Abiola, for saying that. But I mean, I think I remember seeing the submission about, I think there was like 3 days to go or something till closing. And I was like, oh, this looks interesting. I'm just going to suggest it to my publisher and see what they think. And they were like, oh my God, we've got to get this in. And they like rushed it in. So that's why it was all last minute. But yeah, I mean, I can't actually even believe that you're saying this now, that this book is so good and that I'm still a little bit shell-shocked. And it's because when I was writing it, it was my first ever novel for a start because I'd only done picture books for very young children before that. I'd written and illustrated them. And it was like my agent's idea. So, he actually asked me about my childhood when I went to go meet him, and I was like, what's he asking me that for? It's a bit weird. So I told him how I was like dragged up in a Chinese takeaway in Coventry back in the 1980s. And he was like, oh, so many people are going to want to know about that. And I was like, no. There's no way I'm writing anything about my childhood. I've spent my whole of my adult life hiding it, yeah? So there's no way that you're going to get me to write about that. And then he persuaded me, well, first of all, it kind of like started off as a middle grade, kind of let's just put all the funny sort of stories in. Because I was like, oh, okay, if you want me to write about my childhood, there were some really crazy, like you said yourself, there's some crazy moments. Well, there's a lot of crazy moments in there. But I picked out all the funny bits, not the dark bits. Yeah. And I thought, this will make up just a funny book for very young kids. I can cope with that. And it wasn't till later he was saying, why don't you be a bit more honest and transparent about your childhood so that, you're giving people like a more honest account of what it'll be more you, it'll be more real. And I was like, no, I don't like where this is going. you know, I don't want to do this. So it was the complication of deciding whether or not to go ahead with the book because I didn't want to dig up all the crap that I'd been through in my childhood. And secondly, I'd never written a novel before. Like, how many words? Like, picture books. Picture books are like maximum 1,000 words, right? And this is like 60,000 words.
Yeah, it's a lot of words.
I hadn't been trained as a writer, and I had no idea, the first clue how to start writing a novel. So I had to kind of learn on the job. So the whole book is just me trying to learn on the job while I'm writing about my childhood, which was so traumatic. And I'm crying and laughing the whole way through while I'm writing it, going, why am I even doing this? Oh, what the hell is going on? And then handed it in, to get printed and stuff. Just sent it out to the big wide world. And I just thought, we'll just see what happens. Because I genuinely didn't have a clue what I was doing when I was writing it. And then it won the Diverse Book Awards.
And then it won.
Completely crazy.
See what great things can happen. So how long did it take you to write the first draft of Chinglish?
I think it probably took about up to 2 years or something. Because it was, initially it was just a brain dump. I think like you do with your first draft.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of resistance because I was like, I'm having to relive and remember stuff. I know I'm not allowed to swear, so I'm just saying stuff that happened in my childhood. I had to dig up, which took a while to kind of like get my head round because it was so deeply entrenched. Because I thought I'd got over a lot of that trauma, and I was like, I can do this. Yeah, I can do this. It's fine. But there was obviously a lot of stuff that I still was deep down that I had to really dig out. Yeah, it was quite painful.
But was it therapeutic to write this then, or was it completely not?
It did turn into therapy in the end. That's how I kind of got myself through it, I think, because I was like, this is actually, it's purging all that stuff that I actually didn't know was still inside me. So I kind of treated it as free therapy, and that's kind of like how I got through it in the end.
Did your family know you were going to write this book?
Yeah, this whole book is just completely entrenched in kind of problems and things because I'm estranged from my parents. Before I go on, I just want to say to everybody, it's not all doom and gloom. This book is actually, it's actually dark humour. It's actually quite funny.
Why did she say it's funny and she's saying it's traumatic?
I know. But yeah, I didn't tell my parents, so I didn't tell them because I don't talk to them basically. None of my siblings do, if we can help it. And I don't say that in a horrible way. It's just the only way that we can cope. So we didn't tell my parents that I was writing it. And also, Chinglish, right? The mashup of Chinglish is all about the fact that I hardly speak any Chinese. They hardly speak any... Well, my dad does speak English, but my mum doesn't. My dad doesn't like just talking to us anyway. But my mum just doesn't speak any English. And because of that, we can't communicate with each other anyway. So there was no point in kind of calling them up and going, oh, guess what, we just don't have that kind of connection. So no, they didn't know I was writing it. And then towards the end of writing it, I just panicked and I was like, I don't think I can actually finish this book and publish it and get it out there because it's going to be airing all my family's dirty laundry and it might make things worse. And then I was like, well, it can't make things worse because everything's already really crap. And then I think one of my aunties, English-speaking aunties, that are on social media or something, caught wind of it, and they told my parents. Oh. But I still don't think that my dad wouldn't have read it, I don't think. My mum won't because she can't read English. But I think they've just got this idea that it's just a funny kind of book that tells people about our life in the takeaway. I don't think they know, the deeper ins and outs of it,
What did your siblings say when you said, I'm going to write this book about our family?
Kind of mixed reactions. My my older brother, he thought it was amazing to get that story out into the world. He's kind of like me, where we're kind of over it. You know, we're over the whole family trauma thing. You know, we're getting on with our lives now and we're fine with it. My little sister, she doesn't like to talk about the family thing at all. She's not over it. She says she's read the book, but I think she's just gone, oh, that's good.
Oh, yeah.
She's just done that so she can say she's read it.
Yeah.
And my little brother, now that's a bit more complicated because he's had a bit more long-lasting kind of trauma, if you like, from being with my family. So you can't really get a straight answer out of him. So I have no idea whether he's read it or not. But he doesn't seem to mind that it's out there.
Okay. That's so interesting. So how similar, like on a scale of 1 to 10 and 10 being like on the dot, are the characters in Chinglish to your actual family and to yourself?
Right, okay. So the only character I would say that is not similar, but a mashup of different characters is my best friend Tina. So she's actually based on 2 different people. But everybody else, I'd say, is pretty spot on. I'd say a 9.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I wasn't expecting that at all.
Yeah, and you know, you were saying before, like, you were like, I can't believe some of these stories are like real.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they actually are.
That is the story that always makes me laugh the most is when Joe and the dad and the sister go to get the goat.
Yeah.
Bring it to the garden, and they're like, why are we bringing a goat? And Dad's like, oh, because it'll eat all the weeds. And I was thinking, what? And then like, yeah, and the goat did, and all the animals that came and died. And I was like, what is going on in this house? And it was just so funny. I've never seen anything like that.
Well, my parents came over from Hong Kong in the 60s, and they like, I guess every other kind of immigrant that kind of comes over, either makes effort or not to kind of integrate and kind of learn the ways of their new home country. And my parents just never did. So they always did things their way that they did in Hong Kong. So we did everything the Chinese way, which was, you know, I've cut myself, or stick some soy sauce on it. You know, it's like, I don't even know if they do that in Hong Kong. I think it's just my parents are a bit crazy. I don't know. So everything that, you know, that they did, we thought it was normal until we went out into the world and saw all our Western friends doing it completely differently. And also, you know, when you watch the telly, watch soap operas like Coronation Street and EastEnders, and you're like, hold on a minute, they don't do things like that. Do you know what I mean? Why is my family like? And then as you get older and you start sussing all of this out, you start getting a bit more self-conscious and embarrassed and, oh my God, you know, they're doing it all wrong. And then you're getting picked on because you're different. And then all of that happens.
So like Joe, you grew up above a Chinese takeaway. What was that like for you? Especially for those who haven't read Chinglish and you're probably thinking, wait, what is going on here? What was that actually like? Because, you know, I'm probably super naive, but I mean, I love Chinese food. So for me, I'm just kind of like, oh, I feel like that might be quite fun. That, you know, there's like all this fun stuff going on downstairs. You can go sneak some food. But I know a kid actually in my local Chinese, her mum owns a shop and she always has to be there after school or during the holidays, whatever. And she cannot stand it. And I go then I drop books to her, and I didn't have Chinglish to give to her because I needed it. And I was like, there's a book called Chinglish, I think you should read it, because Cigar lives like above a Chinese takeaway. And she's like, oh my God, are you joking? And I just thought I was just so interested in the reaction. But how is it for you living above a Chinese takeaway? What's the good and bad of it?
Honestly, Abiola, honestly, right, since the book was published, because when I wrote it, I was kind of just in this bubble. I was like, I'm just going to write about my life growing up, like being dragged up in a Chinese takeaway, how awful it was. Not knowing, back then in the 80s, that almost all of the immigrants coming over from Hong Kong to all the Commonwealth countries, they started up catering businesses, restaurants, takeaways, and there was tens of thousands of it out there but back in the 80s, I felt so isolated. I just thought that it was just us. And you know, it was just like, oh, it's so unfair, it's so unfair, it's just us. Why did you have to come from Hong Kong to Britain, and instead of integrating and, you know, not standing out like a sore thumb, become even more Chinese? You know, owning a Chinese takeaway and cooking Chinese food and making us live in the takeaway. Like, I just want to blend in, and you're making me stand out, and it's just awful. Like, yeah, so there was racism was so much more rife back in the 80s as well. So we had to kind of put up with that, living above the shop, especially with a lot of takeaways. Like you say with your friend, the family, it's a family-run business most of the time.
Yeah.
So as soon as the kids are old enough to hold a knife without chopping the fingers off, the maids to go in the kitchen and start prepping food. You know, it's like chop the onions, chop the mushrooms, peel the onions, gut the prawns, peel the prawns, and it's on top of going to school and all your homework and all that kind of thing. So that was hideous. The other thing was the freedom, because like when you're that age, you're like, well, all the Western kids at school don't have to do all of this. They're out playing on the bikes, and I've got to come home and start prepping food. And you know, when I was about 12 or 13, and I'm still not very tall, by the way, I'm under 5 foot, and the counter was like here, and I couldn't see over the counter, but I was made to serve customers, you know, and I was like about 12 or 13. I'm still no good at maths. We had no, you know, till where it all adds up and that. Had to do it all in my head, and oh my god, add up. And Fridays and Saturdays were the worst, because we'd get all the junks kicking out time at the pub. They'd all come bowling in completely drunk, and quite a few times there'd be like proper full-on fist fights, and I'm not joking you. So it's just me, the counter separating me from a full-on fist fight. Like grown men, like poof, blood everywhere. So I used to be the one that had to call the police, because I was the only one that could actually make myself, you know, clear enough, like my English was good enough. So there was all of that kind of to deal with at a very young age, plus the fact that living above the takeaway, you got like, I tried to hide as much as I could upstairs, but you'd always get the call from downstairs going, there's customers! But you had to go downstairs, serve the customers or do whatever. But the fan, normally the extractor fan would go on, and you knew as soon as that fan went on, it's busy. So that was, I still get a bit scared by the sound of an extractor fan.
Wow.
Yeah, and the smell as well that permeated through the kitchen into the bedroom that was above. Because it was an end of terrace house that had 2 up, 2 down, that had been converted into a takeaway. So downstairs was just the shop, and then just the kitchen. And then upstairs, it was my parents' bedroom, and then it was me and my sister's bedroom, and then you had to walk through our bedroom to get to the bathroom. So there was no living room. So there was no way you were going to bring mates home. Privacy. Not that I was going to anyway, because I didn't want anyone to know that I lived in a takeaway. So I had no friends. It was kind of like the worst situation I could ever think of. I'm sure there was like loads of the worst people were worse off, but for me, I was just like, oh, this is just
this is my life.
You know, why me? Like all teens do as well, you know.
Oh my goodness. So, you know, in the book, Joe's parents aren't very interested in what she's doing. Joe is very much looking after Bonnie, little sister, and is very much like her parents. And when, you know, Bonnie's made this new friend, she thinks she's stealing and doing all this stuff, she's the one that's really on her. The parents don't really know and aren't bothered. Was that something that actually happened to you? And how do you feel like Joe handles that neglect and having to step up, not through choice, and make sure her sister has some form of parental guidance in some bizarre way?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I don't think I did a very good job at doing the parenting thing, because when you're a kid, you don't really, do you?
Yeah, you're not meant to, are you?
I mean, I think I was too sort of like engrossed in my own sadness and misery to kind of like care too much about my sister. I mean, I did look out for her and everything, but I think I was too self-absorbed in my own misery to do any proper parenting for her. So she was off most of the time. God knows where she went. you know, smoking and everything with a mate when she was like 8 and all that kind of thing. Hanging out with people that weren't the most savoury characters. But as long as she was like back every night, it was fine.
So did the parents not realise that she was going out all the time, sneaking out, or were they just so engrossed in just their business and what they had to do?
They had no idea what the kids were doing. They only knew when we weren't there to help out. They didn't care about our schooling or how we were. They never asked, like, how are you? You know, how was your day? How was school? They didn't do any of that. It was all about the takeaway. It was all about, and this is the mad thing, they worked every single day apart from Christmas Day, and they worked their asses off. And then they used to go and, my dad was a massive gambler, and then he used to go to the horses, gamble it all away, and they both went to the casino a lot as well. So all that money that they earned, like spent so hard earning, they would just frittered away. And they never knew what we were up to. They didn't care what we were doing or, you know, our welfare or anything. They just knew when we weren't there to help them out.
Take away. Oh my God. So Jo and her dad are both artists in the book. Why do you feel like, and this obviously could be for you as well, but why do you feel like Jo is able to go for her dream and really chase being a fashion designer, and the dad, although he's obviously talented, he doesn't chase after that? Do you think that was a dream once and maybe life just kind of pounded it out of him? Or do you think he just wanted to just do a safe job? Like, I mean, running a takeaway, I don't think it's a safe job, you know, it's still like a business that you have to run. But why do you think he didn't go for his dream?
I mean, that's a really good question.
Okay.
First of all, somebody who's that talented at art must know that they're good at art. But I think that it must have been a whole load of different factors. I mean, the fact that they came over and with nothing and built this business and had to keep it going, and because it was so labour intensive, you know, they just didn't have time for anything else.
Yeah.
To pursue any of they didn't even have time to think about, did they even dream? You know? Did they even have that luxury of thinking, I could do something else? I don't think they even had time to think about it, because it was 14-hour days.
Yeah.
And every single day of the year, apart from Christmas Day, it was absolutely relentless.
There's a bit in the book about someone coming to give a flyer about learning English, and to the mum, and Jo's like, Mum, you should go. And Mum's like, well, no, I'm going to have time to do that. And I thought, God, that's so sad that she doesn't think it's important to take that time to learn English and to better herself, because her whole thing is, you know, about the shop. And I just thought, wow, that's so crazy.
And even back then as a kid, I could see how she was so trapped. Like, for some reason, which obviously some, you know, parents keep some sort of, they don't want to discuss certain things with their kids. And it's like, why can't they close a day in the week? You know? Why do they have to work 7 days a week? I didn't get it. Yeah.
Intense.
Yeah.
I always remember that bit in the book and just thinking, oh, I wish she just said yes. And I thought, would the husband let her do that? That's also the other thing, isn't it?
He probably would have, I think. But that's another difficult question, because our parents didn't communicate with us about anything. There's we didn't never know them. And you know what? It's the same on the flip side. They never knew us. And they still don't.
Yeah.
They're like strangers. We're like strangers still.
That's crazy.
This
leads me on to Dad and the mood swings he has that are mentioned a lot in the book. And we never really know, why does he have these mood swings? What's going on here? Because I guess because the kids don't really know. They just know Dad for these mood swings and stuff. Where do you think that comes from? Do you think that it's just from frustration of life, and maybe he did have dreams and it didn't work out? Like, where do you think those mood swings came from?
Well, I mean, in hindsight, he could have actually had some kind of mental disorder that wasn't diagnosed, because back then, you know, in general in Britain, these things weren't talked about as much. I mean, everyone's so super aware these days. And also culturally as well, like the British Chinese, they don't, it's like, oh, you know, you don't talk about stuff like that. You don't talk about someone being not quite right in the head. Do you know what I mean? So we never really, all we knew was that, I think we kind of developed this kind of super sense where you walked into the room and you were like, uh-oh, he's in one of those moods. Let's leave the room again. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, because occasionally, if you weren't careful, you get a beating, and or something thrown at you. Yeah, it was really, we were actually kind of living on the edge the whole time. It was super high anxiety. Yeah, so super anxious, just kind of all the time.
Did you ever clock things that would set him off, or was it just like you just didn't know? It was just whatever it was.
No, right. So there's a bit in the book, and I don't know if I can mention this bit because it's in the book. Is it okay to mention the bit where, right at the end?
Mention whatever you want to mention.
Yeah, Jo was like, she came out with. I mean, it's one of those things that in real life still affects me now, but it was when she went to out on a sports day with all these mates, and that they moved to the new area in Hull, and there was a whole load of bunch of kids that asked if they wanted to do sports day and stuff and play, which Jo did. And then she went back home, and her dad was standing at the top of the stairs, and she thought, uh-oh, this feels wrong. And she went up the stairs, did absolutely nothing wrong. He grabbed her by the scruff of the neck, marched her to the toilet, shoved her head down it, and flushed the water on top of her head. And, you know, it's just like, what? First of all, like, what?
Yeah.
Why? There's not even any reason.
Yeah.
You know, there's not even any reason for doing that. And never knowing why either is torturous.
That's what's interesting about Chinglish. It's such a funny book, but I remember there was those moments that was so dark where I'd be like, whoa, what? Like, what's going on there? And it was just such a random moment of darkness. I just thought, oh my God. Like,
you know what? A lot of people have said that to me, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's like, oh, then it just suddenly went, it just suddenly went dark, and it's like, I mean, there are a few sort of trigger points, I guess, leading up, because you can kind of tell something might happen or whatever. But the reason why it's dark humour and not just a misery memoir is because that's how me and my siblings coped. It was our coping mechanism, which was like, if something horrible happened, you just had to laugh about it. Yeah. Otherwise, you would just be crying all the time. Do you know what I mean? So we learned how to use humour and just turn a horrible situation into something funny and then just move on. Do you know what I mean? That was our thing.
It comes across amazing in the book. Like, that balance is amazing. Because I remember vividly when I first read it, literally going, literally doing that. I was like, oh my God, like, what the hell kind of thing. It just really shocked me. And that's great that you put that across brilliantly. But Dad is like, he loves animals and he seems genuinely happy around animals and stuff. And I just thought it was so interesting. Like, why is it around people he doesn't seem very happy, but around animals he seems to come alive a little bit? He seems to connect with the children a bit when it comes to the animals. Why is that?
Again, it's one of these things that is speculative. It's like, why did he do that? And then you have to kind of like come up with reasons, but not the real reasons, because I'm never going to be able to ask him, and he's never going to probably tell me the truth. But I think, I guess with some people, they can't socialise with humans as well as they can with animals. Yeah. Because animals don't answer back, they don't give you grief, and blah, 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 and all this kind of thing. But we used to think, like, why is he treating the pets better than us? He's going next door to buy them jammy Dodgers. We never get them. Do you know what I mean? Like, why is he giving them all the attention and we're getting a slap across the head?
Sorry.
No, it is funny. No, it is funny because it's so surreal. It's like he's giving the guinea pig. Sorry, I don't know why I said guinea pig. The goats, piggybacks up and down the garden. He used to give them piggybacks, and we used to think that was dead bizarre. Like, but we would just kind of brushed it off as another kind of Hong Kong Chinese thing. It must be what they do in Hong Kong. But we were like, we never have any fun with Dad like that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's crazy. I was thinking, like, every time I saw an animal scene, how the dad would just seem so alive. I was like, maybe he had dreams. I keep literally obsessed with trying to figure out what was his dream being. I thought maybe his dream was to like be a vet. Maybe he wanted to do that, and someone told him that wasn't like a good enough job or something. Because I mean, I don't like animals like that. Do you know what I mean? I barely like my cat half the time. Do you know what I mean? So for him to go out of his way for these strays that he seems to find shows a compassion.
Yeah,
somewhere.
absolutely.
There's something there.
Yeah,
and I'm like, why is it there for the animals and not for yourself?
Yeah. Do you know what? I really wish that I met someone just recently who got in touch with me from reading Chinglish, and he got in touch with me via Zoom and everything. We had a chat because he also kind of grew up in a Chinese restaurant, and I honestly cannot believe the amount of people that have got in touch with me who have had the same experience of growing up a Chinese takeaway and restaurant since the book was published. Going, oh my God, I had exactly the same similar experiences with you and all this kind of thing. And I can't believe how many there are out there. But yeah, sorry, I lost my thread now, Abiola. I can't remember what I was talking about. Sorry. What was it? Can you remember?
Oh, God.
Oh no, dreams. Yeah. Sorry. So this guy contacted me, and he speaks the same dialect. So our dialect that my family speaks is Hatga, which I have no idea why they decided to do that, because it's not a very well often spoken dialect. Normally it's Cantonese.
Right,
and now Mandarin. But hardly anyone spoke Hatgao back then, so that when family and friends came around, they all spoke in Cantonese. So not only did I not understand my parents, I had no idea what all these people were talking about, because it was a completely different dialect.
Right.
So this guy said to me, look, I speak fluent Hatgao. If you want, I can liaise between you and your parents. If you want to ask them any of these questions that you've been dying to have answered, I can liaise between you, and you can get all these answers from them. And I was like, now that actually puts another level of complication onto things, because I haven't actually been given that opportunity before. And when I did, I was like, do you know what? I don't think I'm even ready to do that. Not even ready to actually communicate with them at that level. Yeah. Because it's too massive a gap to close.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wish I could ask my dad, did you have those dreams? You know, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think I could do it just
Maybe
yet.
One day you'll feel ready to do that, and there might be things they really want to communicate to you and they just don't know how to even go about it. But yeah, it's all about timing and being comfortable. But I think that's amazing that someone's reached out to you who could do that.
Yeah.
That's like, wow, where did that even come from? That's brilliant. So, keep that in your back pocket when you're ready, kind of thing.
I will do.
I want to talk about the brother, Simon, and the fact that he went to stay with his grandparents and you can see the resentment he has towards the parents. And I took it like he had the resentment because he wasn't there with them, and he was taken to his grandparents. But I felt like he seemed to have a better life with his grandparents than Joe and Bonnie did. Yes. So I found that a bit conflicting with Simon. I was like, do you want to be here in the house with them lot, or do you not want to be? So where do you think Simon's head at with all that?
I felt that Simon was the lucky one, because he got taken out of that environment of my parents and the takeaway, and he lived with my grandparents who didn't tell him off and beat him up the whole time, and he was away from the takeaway, and he kind of lived almost a more normal life, because they lived in a terraced house with no takeaway underneath, and he came and went as he pleased without someone going, chop those onions, peel those prawns, kind of thing. He was just left to get on with it. He had more freedom, it seemed. Yeah. So I thought that he was actually the lucky one, because he'd escaped the environment of the takeaway. So I actually felt resentful towards him, because he wasn't in the takeaway having to help out, like we were, me and Bonnie were. until that point in the book where he was asked to. And that's where he went a little bit crazy and, had a bit of a fit. Yeah.
I did wonder, why was Simon sent to his grandparents, and why couldn't you and Bonnie say, hey, we want to live with you too? It kind of wasn't ever mentioned in the book, and I just always wondered about that.
You know how all the way through the book there's "you are" in brackets, unknown reason? I put that there on purpose because I haven't got a clue. I couldn't even make anything up. It's like whenever I didn't know anything, I put in the book, I put "you are," unknown reason. Because I don't know. So he went to live with my grandparents when he was about 9 or something. And no one told us anything. Oh, just one day he was here and the next he wasn't. And we were like, well, where's he gone? Oh, to live with your grandparents. Oh, okay. And then, when you're a kid, you've got no power to control anything.
Yeah, of course.
You just get on with stuff, don't you? And you just accept it.
Yeah.
So, that's what happened.
So interesting.
It was the same as, sorry, Abiola, I was going to tell you, this bit wasn't in the book. It's the same as when, actually, this bit was in the book. Do you remember when I got a teddy bear chair for Christmas? Off someone mysterious? I had no idea. We never got Christmas presents or anything. So it was like, went downstairs and it was just like there, all wrapped up. And it was like, what is this? Who's it from? There's no label on it, but it's got my name on, but it doesn't say who it's from. Open it up and it was a little chair shaped in the shape of a teddy bear with a little head on the back of the seat and everything, and the arms went out like this. And it was just the best thing ever because I never got Christmas presents or anything, and I sat in it all day and I was like, oh, this is amazing. Next day, got up to sit in the chair, it was gone. And I was like, well, where's the chair?
That made me really sad.
Where's the chair? It still makes me sad. So where's the chair gone? What? And my parents were like, what chair? And I thought I'd gone mad. What's that chair? Was it a figment of my imagination? Did I just imagine it? And this bit isn't in the book. So, out of nowhere, a little puppy, it was a border collie, really cute little puppy, out of nowhere, suddenly appears. Oh my gosh, is this our new pet? Amazing. Oh, it's gorgeous. Bought a little lead, called it Sketch, because I like drawing the whole time, so took it for walks. And I think I must have had it for a week. And then all of a sudden it's gone. And it's like, where's the dog? What dog? And I was like, whoa. I swear this must have affected me somehow. Do you know what I mean? Mentally.
I don't know. It's this weird power trip thing. And it's just like, why are we playing this weird game for each other?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So weird. Why would you do that to your child?
When the chair was gone, I was like, was she so desperate for a present that she imagined this chair?
I sat in it and everything. It was real. Oh, you're going to make me cry again. I still can't get over it.
Oh my God. I want to switch it quickly because I know we're running out of time. Okay. Oh about the racism and the 80s. So there's a character called Gertie, I hope I'm saying her name right.
Yeah.
In the book, and she makes a racist slur, like about the table. She makes a few racist slurs. She's a bit problematic, that girl. To Joe, and there were times I was like thinking, Joe, you need to call her out on this, and she doesn't. And I just wondered, like, was that Joe's first time hearing something, and she wasn't sure how to handle that, or like, is she just so almost used to not speaking out because she has to kind of hold someone in that she just almost missed her chance? I was just wondering that, because Jo has her moments where she can be feisty and, stick up for herself. And in that moment, I was like, why didn't you say something to this girl?
I think, do you know what? And I still get it to this day where you don't expect it. And so when someone says it, you do a double take and you think, did they actually? Okay. And then, you're a little bit so shocked that you can't actually you're a bit speechless. And it actually happens still to this day when I hear people saying stuff. And I still can't, because I think it's because it's disbelief. And you're just that has, although I won't let that go all the time. There are moments when I am assertive and I'll say, hold on a minute, that is just not on. but yeah, it's because I'm one of these people that I just think that most people are decent people, yeah. And
Yeah.
I go about life actually, you know, everybody's lovely. Everybody's, you know, got the kindest intentions and they're all good at heart, basically. And so when somebody does say that, it's a little bit of it's shocking.
It takes a minute, yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, whoa, okay. And I think that's, I think I've just had that like all my life. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that explains it. I was
Yeah.
thinking, come on, Joe, like slap this girl.
Yeah, I think probably as well when I was younger, I was a little bit more naive about stuff like that and didn't really know how to handle negativity in that way. I think because I was getting it from all angles. I was getting off my parents, getting off the kids at school, getting off the drunk customers coming in, you know, and it was very difficult to kind of defend yourself the whole time. You kind of get beaten down. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very wearing.
Yeah, of course. And especially when you feel alone and you feel like no one really has your back, even though Jo obviously has her friend that does start backing her and defending her, whatnot. She's super like secure in herself in that way to do that. But especially when you feel like you've been fighting for so long, I guess after you're kind of just like, oh, whatever, like I just don't.
Yeah, you just kind of start accepting it as well. It's like, well, everyone's doing it. How am I going to stop this? It's just going to keep happening.
Yeah, for sure. No, I get that. Yeah. I totally get that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about the 80s and the fact that you grew up in the 80s, the book set in the 80s, which is one of the things I really love about. I love that. I mean, I was born in 88, so I totally missed the 80s. I grew up in the 90s, but I've heard the 80s was a laugh. I've heard it. So, you know, tell me like a few fun things that happened in the 80s that you can remember.
Well, I mean, you know, I do go on about living in the takeaway in the 80s was the worst time ever, but it was also the best time ever because 80s music, cannot beat it. So my saving grace, really, that got me through the 80s was buying every single issue of Smash Hits.
Oh, Smash Hits.
With all the lyrics of all the songs back then in the top 40, because back then we didn't have like the downloady thing, and it was all every week, Top of the Pops, top 40. That was, you know, religiously had to watch that. And then you bought Smash Hits every fortnight, and they'd have the lyrics to all the songs in the charts. And then you would put the radio on a Sunday at 7:00 and put the cassette in and record it so that you could then learn the lyrics and sing over the top of the cassette with your hairbrush. It sounds like a cliche, but everyone did it. And then now because I really wanted to blend in, I really wanted to look like Madonna and Bananarama and all those pop stars. So I used to like dye my hair and, you know, bleach it and then put colour on it and then backcomb it and put loads of hairspray on. And, you know, I used to go down to the market and buy all the gear and everything, all the batwing sleeves and the Madonna sort of luminous tea bag tops and stuff. And, you know, I think I looked a right mess, but but at the time I was totally into my music. And there was one time when I was like, yeah, my hair looks absolutely amazing. Backcombed it all like this. Went downstairs and my mum just went, your hair looks like a chicken's arse. And I was like, I was mortified. I was like, well, I'm not getting any fashion tips off you.
From you.
Because you wear velveteen jogging bottoms with elasticated ankles, okay? Yeah, so, yeah. I thought I looked hot, so.
That's funny. Oh, God. There was a bit in the book about Jo's mum telling her that they had like an arranged marriage and the dad was meant to marry this pretty girl and whatnot. And I was just like, wait, what? And do you feel like they would have been different people if they weren't married to each other? Or do you feel like, no, because it's just embedded in them?
That's really hard to say. My mum has always relied on... because my mum never learnt English, she relied on my dad forever to do all like the paperwork and stuff, you know? Yeah. Pay the bills, you know, get the business sorted, all that kind of thing. So she was like, it's a really unhealthy kind of a codependency.
Yeah.
He depended on her to do all the donkey work. Yeah, her hands were like absolutely mauled to bits from like the chopping and the slicing and the deep fat fryer and everything. She had no nails left. And he did like the minimum amount of work. So I think he relied on her to do all the hard work, and she relied on him to do all like the paperwork and stuff like that. So, and they're still together, which I find amazing, you know. So there is a codependency definitely going on there, but I don't really know if they would have been any different if they'd married other people. I don't know.
Yeah. Quite a loaded question, to be fair. I want to switch gears for a second. So obviously this is a whole panel we're doing, and we're talking about the Diverse Book Awards, which obviously means we're talking about diversity in publishing and the lack of it, or we can say the slow moving growth of it. In terms of Asian representation, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's improving. And I think it's massively improved with the Diverse Book Awards, even though it's only been going for a year. I think it's massively changed, like, the whole kind of landscape. I can see that the publishing industry are making great strides to kind of represent and all this kind of thing now. And I don't know whether it's just box ticking or not, but even if it is, I don't care. As long as you're doing it, it's fine.
Yeah.
I do know that because I got approached by somebody who was doing some sort of dissertation or whatever, and she got in touch with me and she was like, do you know any other British Chinese YA authors? and I hadn't even thought about it. And I was like, do you know what? I don't. She went, I think you're the only one. I was like, what? Because in America, it's a completely different story, isn't it?
It's a different ball game in America, isn't it?
So
I was actually thinking that the other day, actually, about you and representation. And I was like, I can't think of anyone else.
And that was actually quite a shocker, actually. So, I think I'm actually the first YA British Chinese author.
Does that make you feel... I don't know. Does that make you feel liberated? Does it make you feel uncomfortable? Like, does it make you feel like you've got a bit of like a responsibility on you? Do you not feel like that? Like, how does that make you feel? That's a lot, I think, you know, to be the first.
Yeah, and the only one, I think, so far as well.
Yeah.
I think there's, I don't know what the numbers are exactly, but I think there's about 450,000 British Chinese in Britain at the moment. A lot of them have contacted me to tell me how much of a role model I am, which is really scary because I wasn't ready for that, and there's no way I still even feel qualified for that. You know, I feel like I've got this responsibility now for being this voice.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I didn't even know what I was doing when I was writing the book.
I didn't sign up for this.
I don't know what I'm doing. So it's all of a sudden, I'm like meant to be this voice, and I'm like having to kind of quickly gen up and that, like, oh God, what am I supposed to say? And I better do some research and all this kind of thing. So it's a bit of a huge responsibility for someone who's just been thrust into that position, if you like.
Yeah.
But I hope that I'm leading the way for other British Chinese authors to kind of enter the industry, you know?
Oh, 100%. And I hope that publishers, especially if you're watching this, editors, let's do better.
Yeah.
Let's get more booze in the world, please. Because I think one of the things that I love about Chinglish is it's obviously a completely different world to me. And, you know, I thought it was just fascinating. Even just like the things that your family would eat at Christmas, because everyone who's from like an ethnic group eats a very different type of Christmas meal. And I was just like, oh, so that's what you eat at Christmas. Oh, that's so interesting. And even though it sounds like weird food, I'm like, oh, we eat that kind of stuff in Nigeria as well. And it was just interesting. And it's like, that's what books are meant to be. You're meant to just really throw yourself in someone else's culture and learn, you know?
Yeah.
And it'd be great to have more books like that.
Yeah, I mean, there was a slight danger of, because I know about the whole kind of like perpetuating stereotypes and stuff like that. But actually, that was my life, and that was the life of tens of other thousands of British Chinese, and still is. But with Chinglish, I guess it's showing somebody trying to break out of that stereotype as well, trying to break out of that mold.
Yeah.
But like you were saying, you know, it's a good source of cultural sort of information for people who don't really know. I mean, I reckon
100%.
everybody has got Chinese takeaway in there at the end of the street, in their town, somewhere on the high street. But no one, after 3 or 4 generations of being here since the biggest kind of like immigration back in the 50s, 60s, no one still really knows about who is termed still as a silent minority, you know? So I think it's good to get us visible out there, normalised, like, hello.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and you're here to help us. Yeah, it's great that you're here to help us do that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this is what the awards are about, isn't it? It's about highlighting voices that aren't heard enough and books that we've never heard of and telling people you need to get these books. So I'm just so glad this book won. I'm just letting anyone know, if you have any questions for Sue that you want me to ask, I might have tackled everything. I feel like I've done quite a range of questions. But if you do have anything, do put it in the chat. Sue, I wanted to ask you about, for anyone who is starting out, and hopefully there are, you know, Asian writers right now who are watching this and who are like, you know, seeing themselves in you and wanting to write that story, what advice would you give to them?
Oh, right. So learning from my mistakes, I wish that I'd actually joined some kind of writers group before I started on Chinglish, because I felt like I was so alone in the whole process, like, and I didn't know anything. I didn't even know that you could join a writers forum or, you know, meet other writers and discuss, and, you know, and then they could support and help you. I didn't even think about that. So I think that's a really good idea. Also, oh my God, like I was telling you before, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. So you don't actually have to know everything before you start writing a book. Just do it. If you've got a story, you know, everyone has got a story, and I think we need to hear all these stories, because we need to know as much about all these different cultures and people and backgrounds as possible for us to all get on with each other more better, you know? We just need to kind of connect more like that. And so don't be scared. Don't be scared. Just come out and do it, you know? I wasn't an academic at school either. I was rubbish at school, got really bad grades. I actually, when I was doing English at senior school, when I was about 13, it was one of my favourite subjects, creative writing. My teacher pulled me to one side after I'd handed in a short story that I'd done, which I loved, proud of, and she said, is English your first language? And I was like, I don't even know Chinese. You know, she went, you know, back in the 80s, it was a bit different back then, but she basically told me that my story was crap. And I was like, oh my God, that must mean that I'm crap at writing stories. And that put me off writing until I was in my late 30s when I started writing again. So let me just tell everyone out there, all the aspiring writers, honestly, it's never too late. Don't think that you're rubbish. Just do it. You never know what's going to happen.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I think I've got time for probably one last question. It's a question I think every writer asks at some point. So I figured you can give them some advice in that, because you obviously have an agent. How did you get an agent? How did that all come about? Right.
Okay. So the Children's Writers and Artists Yearbook. Don't know where I'd heard about that, but I picked a copy up, went through it. And it gives you all the specs, and it's updated every year, and it tells you all the agents and publishers and what genres they do and everything. So I bought that, and then I ignored all the specs and things. I was like, I'm just going to send in what I want. So it was like, just send in, you know, page 1 with 1 colour spread. And I'm like, I'm going to give you the whole mock-up with everything in it.
And you're going to love it.
Yeah, like it or lump it sort of thing. And then I just sent it out to all the suitable agents and publishers that I could find in this book. And it took 3 years, actually, before an agent picked the phone up and called me, and I just kept going. I had a full-time job at the time, but I was just like, it's what I want to do, you know. I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep trying until someone says yes.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I did. Just persevering and believing in yourself and faith.
I love that, because literally, I think I tell everyone that. I'm like, you just need to keep going, even when you're getting the no's and the stuff. Maybe the agent for you hasn't even made an agency yet. Do you know what I mean? But like, there'll always be someone to connect. So that's awesome that you just kept going until you got it. And now look at you. to you. Do you know what I mean? Look at what you've achieved and whatnot. You've like paved way.
Yeah, and I still can't believe it sometimes. I'm like, oh, really? Oh my gosh.
It's amazing. Could you tell us before we go about any new books you've got coming up or anything we should be looking out for from you?
Actually, tomorrow I'm doing a workshop in Wigtown
nice.
for Maddie. Yep. So I've actually done a series for middle grade, highly illustrated, humour, lovely to write because it's like Chinglish without the dark bits. So it's just all the funny bits.
Oh.
Yeah, so I loved doing that. I really enjoyed writing that. So the first book's out already, and then I'm working on the illustrations for book 2 and the manuscript for book 3. So there's a series of 3 at the moment. And I'm actually, once I've finished at Wigtown Festival, going to a writer's retreat to start on the sequel for Chinglish. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment.
That is amazing. Oh, I'm so happy about that. Wait. So hold on. Oh, why are you just saying this now? I've got questions now. Come on, Sue. Come on. Is it going to be straight after where Chinglish finishes, or it's going to be a few years? Like, is Jo already like in fashion school? Like, where is it going to start from? Do you know? It's
going to start. So I don't want to do spoilers, but she leaves to go to London at the end of the book, and everything's like amazing, like new life and all that kind of thing. And then things rapidly kind of go downhill. So the sequel will start off in London, where I'm like, oh my God, this is brilliant, full of joy and excitement for the big smoke in London. And then it goes through my whole kind of like starting at college, and then very quickly I then fall in with the wrong crowd, and then I become pregnant, and then I become homeless, and then I'm living in a squat while I'm pregnant, and then it ends when I have the baby. Which I was very, very reluctant. It's taken me ages to decide to write this sequel, because with Chinglish 1, there's lots of funny anecdotes. With the second part, not so funny. So I'm like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? It's taken me ages to get my head around it. And I'm starting it at last. But, okay, exclusive for Wigtown. I think I'm going to do it as a graphic novel. And that's helped me come to terms with doing it in pictures. Nice. It's going to be easier, I think, for me to express myself than in words for the sequel. So there you go.
Nice. And do you know roughly when it would be due to come out?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, this took Chinglish 1 took about 3.5 years in total. Yeah. But I was working full time in another job at the time, though. Whereas now I'm a full-time writer, so I've got more time to. So it'll be quicker
no
than
excuses
that.
Now, Sue. No excuses now. You got to get it done. I need to read it. I want to prove. Right, okay. I want to be one of the first people to read it. Right, okay. So I'm just saying now, it's been recorded that I've said this. Gosh, right, okay, fine. I want better try me. I don't want to see proofs flying around Twitter and I don't have one. I'm going to be very loudly irritated by that.
I have been told.
You have been told, Gail. That is amazing. Thank you for sharing that as well. I really appreciate that. Welcome. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us. I hope everyone watching has enjoyed themselves and learned so much. Sue is so funny and such a pleasure to talk to. This was like the easiest chat I've ever done in my life. Chinglish is out. It is gorgeous. It is funny. It is dark. It is amazing. Everyone should read this book. It's one of my favourite books. I tell everyone about this. I'm so pleased, and I will always be pleased that Sue was one of our first winners. And this is one of our books that will be in Diverse Book Awards history. And that makes me really, really, really happy. Thank you so much, Wigtown YA. The Diverse Book Awards winners will be announced on October 21st. So please tune into that. And thank you. That's a wrap from us.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. See you soon.
Bye.